The TSLY, or the Yield Max Tesla Option Income Strategy ETF, has become quite a popular ETF over the last year, and for good reason. Considering things like the current distribution rate that TSLY offers is around 51.47%. But what about when it comes to smaller investors that want to buy into TSLY? In this video, we're going to explain how long it would take for an investor who invests just $1,000 into the TSLY ETF to turn the $1,000 into $10,000. So if you happen to be an investor that doesn't have all that much cash balance to work with, but are still interested in something like TSLY and want to turn a relatively small amount of money into a massive amount of money, make sure to stick around, drop a like down below, and subscribe, and let's get into it. So first, just a quick little background on the TSLY Yield Max Option Income ETF. Just the basics though, because we've talked about this ETF so many times on this channel, and if you happen to be interested in that, go back and watch some of my previous videos. So right here directly on the website from Yield Max, it says the fund does not invest directly into Tesla, which is the underlying stock that TSLY basically tracks or references to. It also says investing in the fund involves a high degree of risk because it uses a synthetic cover call strategy. Also important, says the fund strategy will cap potential gains if Tesla share increases in value. But also importantly, this fund strategy is subject to all potential losses if Tesla shares decrease in value. But now to get to the fun part, looking at some of the previous distributions when it comes to TSLY, and let's be real here, this is why you and I are interested, and this is why I actually own TSLY throughout my portfolios. The TSLY distributions have been massive, dividends that I've never seen across any other stocks or ETFs in my entire life. For example, back in January, TSLY had almost a $1 distribution. Then in February, 90 cents. 90 cents in March, 82 cents in April, 44 cents in May, 80 cents in June. Back in July, $1.06 per share in a month, 83 cents back in August, 58 cents back in September. So from August to September, the distributions did go down quite a bit, but still 58 cents is massive. And then just recently, 57.5 cents, more or less, in October. Now, before we go into the math and explain how long it would take an investor to turn $1,000 into $10,000 by investing into TSLY, keep in mind one certain thing. When investing into a covered call ETF, especially like this one, TSLY, you're most likely going to see the ETF decay in price over time. Now, this is because a covered call ETF does have a capped amount of upside. Now, since TSLY references to Tesla stock, if Tesla stock has a crazy green day, moves up in price, TSLY is going to be able to follow it by a degree and have some of the upside captured, but it's going to have a limited upside because, again, the covered call mechanics, which I went over in previous videos, so again, make sure to take a look. But now on the other hand, if Tesla, once again, the stock that TSLY references to, decreases in value quite a bit, let's say on a daily basis, which can happen with a high beta stock like Tesla, well then of course TSLY is going to lose some of its value. And although the cover call is going to make up for some of the loss, it doesn't have necessarily a capped downside. So that's exactly one of the reasons on why cover call ETFs can be risky at times, and just know how they work. So next, in order to see how long it would take an investor to potentially turn $1,000 invested into TSLY into $10,000, we would input the following: a first of all, starting principal of $1,000 when it comes to TSLY. Next, on top of that, I put $600 of annual contributions, so $50 more per month basically you'd be adding into your portfolio to buy more TSLY on top of the initial. Now, the initial annual dividend yield is 51%, at least that's the distribution rate that it's offering as of right now. But again, the hard part about TSLY, and the hard part about using TSLY in something like a dividend calculator, you're not necessarily going to be able to have a real honest idea of what things are going to look like necessarily, because these numbers are going to change so much. Because as you see here on the distribution details, TSLY has paid anywhere from 57.5 cents on a monthly basis all the way to $1.06 on a monthly basis. So if we were to just go off of something on the lower end of things, we could go with a 51% initial starting dividend yield. Now on top of that, TSLY's distribution frequency is monthly and dividend reinvestment turned on. So once again, keep in mind, these numbers are not going to necessarily show us the decay in ETF price like we've seen in the past. But once again, this is just a fun experiment to see how long in theory it would take for an investor to turn $1,000 of starting principal into $10,000 plus of TSLY. So here we have it. If nothing changed, if everything stayed the same exactly how we inputted it, a $1,000 investment into TSLY would earn around $647 per year after our annual contribution of $600 on top of the $1,000. So of course, right off the bat, that seems huge, and for good reason. The TSLY distributions have been huge, which is of course why you and I were even interested in this ETF in the first place. By year number 2, after the dividends being reinvested and after the next annual contribution, this investor's portfolio would be around $2,150 already by year number 2, with around $1,400 per year in dividends. By year number 3, a $3,900 portfolio, and almost $2,600 per year in dividends. Year number 4, $6,700 and $4,300 in dividends. And by year number 5, almost $11,000 and $7,000 plus per year in dividends. So in theory, if an investor was to invest $1,000 in TSLY and add $600 more per year on top of that, and if everything was to stay basically stagnant, as things are right now, an investor could basically have around $10,000 within the next 5 or so years. But again, you also have to keep in mind that the ETF price can decay over time, so these are of course all just estimated results. But the crazy and powerful thing is that if an ETF actually does continue to pay out that type of yield, 51% distribution like the TSLY ETF has so far, investors are going to see massive returns over time. At least they could potentially. Now, because the TSLY ETF is so volatile and it doesn't pay the same amount on a monthly basis, and on top of that, the actual ETF price is sort of all over the place, this is always, for me personally, again, do whatever you want when it comes to investing, but for me personally, this is always going to be just a relatively small portion of my overall portfolio, and is never something that's going to make up of, say, more than 1 or 2%. But still, don't get it twisted, I definitely want to have some TSLY in my portfolio, as the performance as far as year to date has been very good, and honestly, I don't mind at all getting these nice juicy dividends, which I've actually got over the last few months. And although I do see some investors online investing like their entire portfolios in something like TSLY, I just don't understand how someone could stomach, say, earning 57 cents per share on one month, 44 cents per share on another month, and then $1.06 per share on a month after that. It's sort of just too much all over the place, which is again one of the reasons for me personally why I would never have it make up a majority of my portfolio. A lot of different investors are concerned about the fact that a lot of these different yield max option covered call ETFs tend to lose most of their value over time, even if they do distribute a massive dividend along the way. Now, on top of that, there's also tons of other investors that say, if you want to invest in something like TSLY, the yield max option income ETF, you'd be better off just buying into shares of Tesla, which is the underlying stock that TSLY sells covered calls on synthetically. Because the year-to-date performance of Tesla is 127+%, and that's of course not even including a dividend. Now, through all this hype, I myself purchased around 100 or 150 shares of TSLY, and even a few shares of APLY and some of the other yield max income strategy ETFs. But I made it very clear from the start that I had no intention on going big on any of these ETFs, considering this strategy for my more low beta, more conservative investment strategy just doesn't really match, but I still bit the bullet and grabbed some shares. But when it comes to the TSLY ETF or the yield max ETFs in general, I want to hear what you think about them down below in the comments. Is this something that you currently have invested in your portfolio? And if you do, let us know how many shares you have down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.